What's up, guys? You're listening to episode 6 of the Jal Lord podcast show. It is Wednesday, August 9th, 2017. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not uploading. My camcorder's been missing for a couple weeks, and I just haven't really felt like making a podcast, but boy, do I have a lot to talk about today. First thing I'd like to talk about is that today there was another vehicle ramming in a Paris suburb today. 6 people were injured. Luckily, nobody was killed. The driver of the vehicle was shot and arrested, and now he's in custody. They're saying the motive is not yet clear, even though this was intended to target French soldiers who have been on high alert and patrolling the city streets since the terror attacks of Charlie Hebdo in Paris in 2015. I really hope to God ISIS doesn't claim responsibility for it, which they probably will. However, despite the fact that nobody died, the US and UK media outlets are trying to make this look like a miniature 9/11, and the French media outlets are portraying this just like any other breaking news story. They really need to start calling ISIS members cultists, because that's what they are. ISIS is a fringe cult that represents 0.003% of the total Muslim population. Yet whenever they target white Westerners, it gets like days and weeks or even months of round-the-clock wall-to-wall news coverage, and any Muslim leaders condemning it will only get 2 to 3 minutes, and that's if they're lucky. I was also reading this past weekend in Paris, there was a 18-year-old guy that they caught brandishing a knife at the Eiffel Tower and yelling Allahu Akbar, and it turned out he had like serious mental health problems, and he was planning an ISIS-inspired attack, and he admitted to the law enforcement that he was going to do that. And that brings me to an often overlooked factor in the whole violence epidemic in the world in general: mental health. I remember reading that the perpetrator of the 2016 Bastille Day terror attack in Nice was given some sort of SSRI drug, aka antidepressants, sometime before the attack. But I've also read that the perpetrator of the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting was also mentally ill and had bipolar disorder, but they never look at the mental health aspect if the perpetrator is Muslim or if they're Hispanic, black, etc. They only look at the mental health aspect if the perpetrator is white and male. Examples of this include the Sandy Hook shooting, the Isla Vista shooting, and the Oregon school shooting of 2015. The perpetrators of these 3 mass shootings all had Asperger's syndrome, and one of them even had like a huge video game collection, and the media was all over it. The perpetrator of the Sandy Hook school shooting was shown to have had Fanapt in his system when he committed the shooting, and I saw a similar thing with one of the Columbine shooters, because their autopsy showed that they had Luvox in their system when they committed it. And I've read that like the perpetrators of like the 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting and the Bastille Day truck attack were both those perpetrators, like they had like alcoholism, drugs, mental illness, and whatnot. Yet the media tries to make you think that they're like true Muslims who are following their religion exactly, and which is not the case. As somebody who's read the Quran cover to cover, I honestly can't believe how people don't just read it for themselves and instead listen to all these alt-right hate preachers whenever a terrorist attack happens. For example, it's forbidden to force people to convert, and most of the violence in the Quran was for a specific place and time. Anyways, back to the whole Paris vehicle ramming debacle today. I just found out that the perpetrator was an Algerian who was not known to police at all. Usually when this sort of thing happens, the suspect is usually like, they say things like known to authorities for months, and that gives you the impression that these people are turned loose on purpose. France is 13% Algerian, and they're treated like crap over there. France had occupied Algeria from 1830 to 1962, and they did some really horrific shit. Here in the US, the ghettos are basically like black and Hispanic, while over in Europe, the ghettos are predominantly Muslims from like northern Africa and former European colonies. So Muslims in Europe are in bad socioeconomic conditions, and you have a lot of hate preachers running around, and you have rampant Islamophobia from like politics, the news, the media, and then they wonder why people from these disaffected communities join ISIS. But let's move on to the next topic, shall we? A couple weeks ago I saw the movie Dunkirk in the theater, and I must say, absolutely good movie. 2 solid thumbs up. The film is about the Battle of Dunkirk, which took place in northern France in 1940, and the movie, they're trying to get all these people off the beach before the Nazis come in and take over so they can prepare to defend Britain from Nazi Germany. This movie didn't really have a lot of dialogue until the end, but there was like lots and lots and lots of action. It's like action, action, action. I felt like I was on a roller coaster in a theater due to the surround sound and the wall-to-wall screens, and this was a really good movie-going experience for me, something I hadn't had in a while. Throughout the film, we see all these individual civilians bringing their boats out to help get the people off the beaches of Dunkirk and back to Britain. They're like going across the English Channel in these small civilian fishing vessels, and this sort of reminded me of the White Helmets, those humanitarian guys in Syria who help rescue people from the bombings and the airstrikes and the explosions and whatnot. I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, but I will say this. My final thoughts, 2 solid thumbs up and definitely 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not usually the type to watch war movies, since most war movies lately seem to be demonizing Islam and Muslims and like glorifying like our wars of aggression and promoting this sort of like big, blatant, loud patriotism that paved the way for Donald Trump to become president of the United States. But this movie was different, and I really, really liked it and would definitely recommend it to a friend. Last thing I want to talk about before I close out this podcast is the NFL. Football season is right around the corner, and normally I get excited about it since I'm a big Steelers fan, but I will not be watching football this season. You want to know why? Because Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job, and like no team has signed him yet. And I remember Colin Kaepernick because he took a knee during the national anthem to protest police brutality. And I know this is going to make me sound unpopular, but good job, Colin Kaepernick. For those of you saying Colin Kaepernick's a traitor and like he's un-American and whatnot, Colin Kaepernick wasn't hurting anybody. He wasn't burning down the CVS. He wasn't flipping over cop cars. He wasn't beating people up or anything like that. He was exercising his First Amendment right to protest, and he was very peaceful about it. You may disagree, but it's his right to protest. In some countries, Colin Kaepernick would be thrown in jail or even executed for not standing up for the national anthem. And if you agree with that, there's a wonderful country called Israel you should move to. So unless Colin Kaepernick gets signed anytime soon, the odds aren't looking great for him. I will be boycotting the NFL and will stop buying jerseys, not watch any games, and so forth. I might even consider getting into soccer. Well, that's it for today, folks. Once again, you are listening to episode 6 of the Ja Lord Podcast Show. It is Wednesday, August 9th, 2017. Peace.